How Apple's ecosystem powers my daily YouTube production. I've been making YouTube videos on my channel now for almost 18 months and I've tried out a lot of different hardware, but there's a reason I moved away from a pro camera to a pro iPhone. So we're going to talk about that and how Apple's ecosystem supports my daily YouTube habit. I'm iKev Dave, and every day I share the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours on my YouTube channel, right here. But this isn't about news. This is a look behind the scenes at what I do, what I use to do it every day, as well as how I did it around a full-time job and a family. And in case there's anything I'm using that you're interested in picking up, I'll include affiliate links in the description which help to support the channel but don't cost you any extra. And it starts with a script, normally. There are days, especially when I'm super limited on time, that I'll just pop down some talking points, but normally, at least for the first half of my video, it is at least to some extent scripted. Apple Notes is my app of choice here. I tried using a few others, but Apple Notes is always right there. Whether I hear about something while I'm out and about, washing the dishes, or sitting at my desk, I can always make a note about whatever I want to cover in the next video. Then, when it comes time to write a script, the bare bones are already there for me. So, I guess we should talk about the timings a little bit. In most cases, this script is written between about 9 PM and 11 PM, though sometimes that overruns and the night gets a little bit late. Once the main topics are covered, I'll head to YouTube Studio on the desktop and copy and paste any questions for iCave answers over into the document, along with the name of who is asking. In 99% of cases, this is all the contact I have with the questions before shooting the show, though I will glance over them to make sure it's actually a full question and it makes sense, and I've got some vague idea of how to answer it. On occasion though, someone will ask something very technical and I will have to do a little bit of background reading, but it's very much the exception, not the rule. Once that script is all done, it gets transferred to a spare iPhone, which right now is an iPhone 8 with a broken display glass. That sits in the teleprompter mount that I have on a stand attached to the desk, over the top of my 4K TV that is my main display. That slots into the base of my teleprompter with the iPhone 12 Pro Max in the back. That's right, the whole of this channel is shot on last year's iPhone, even though I have a fully capable 4K mirrorless Lumix G7 camera. And this camera is actually what I originally shot the videos on for the channel when I was using an iPhone XS as my daily driver, but the autofocus on it is horrendous and I had to publish a number of videos that I really wasn't happy with, so I switched to using the iPhone as soon as the iPhone 12 Pro Max came out. I shot everything in Filmic Pro for a while using the iPad Air 4 with the Filmic Remote app as my monitor, and while the autofocus is pretty solid, I'd actually have some issues with colour balance, although that is 100% due to my own lack of knowledge in how to set up a proper camera, which is basically what Filmic Pro turns your iPhone into. So for the past few weeks, I've actually reverted to letting Apple and the default camera app take care of all of that with its HDR video recording mode. Of course, I still need to make sure that I'm framed up okay, and that's what the Apple Watch does as my saviour here, as that works as my monitor and allows me to start and stop the recording, as well as being able to see the recording duration so you can make sure it didn't randomly stop on you, which is really helpful. Basically, the only non-Apple stuff in use is actually the lights that we've got going on here, which is a combination of cheap LED offerings from Neewer, or Newer, not sure how you say it, and also my second display, which is up here, and I just set it up with a white wallpaper so it acts like a big softbox for me. The other is the microphone, which is a Fine 678, I believe, which is a USB-powered microphone, records directly into QuickTime on the Mac. I've done a full video on this, unboxing it, reviewing it. You can find that one up here. The iPhone 8's teleprompter app bounces off the glass in front of the camera and iPhone, and once everything is recorded, the file is then airdropped to the Mac for editing. I sync the audio with a clap, or at least I try to remember to when both the camera and the audio are recording, so that I can sync it basically via that peak visually in Final Cut. Because of the teleprompter, the iPhone's internal audio, which wouldn't be the best at the greatest of times, is completely ruined and muffled, hence the external audio recording. That said, the iPhone and AirPods are in fact a decent alternative if you're out and about, although I also have a wired lavalier mic, which even the one as cheap as I use, the Boya one from Amazon, about £18, with Apple's Lightning jack to headphone adapter was what we actually did a huge amount of the early channel stuff with, and it gives much better audio than the internal stuff. So when it comes to editing, the audio is already on the Mac waiting for me, and the video is a super easy airdrop away from the iPhone. This is a huge example of the ecosystem's advantages because it's far faster than using Lightning, and in fact faster than plugging plugging in an SD card. So it gets airdropped around about midnight, and then once it's there, I usually sleep until the children wake me up at around about 5:30 in the morning, and then we edit on the Mac. The Mac in question is the cheapest one that money can buy, brand new at least from Apple. It's Apple's M1 Mac Mini, and it's the stock base configuration. 8-core M1 CPU, 8-core GPU, 256GB of internal storage. That's it, $699, brand new from Apple. Video and audio are then dropped into Final Cut Pro, into a single project file that I already have set up and I use every single time. The reason for that is I have a handful of blocks that I reuse, like the intro sting with the logo animation, thanks to Apple Tomorrow for rendering that bit for me, by the way, and the iCave answers and title overlays, as these have already been customized with different fonts to the way that they came as standard. Because of using the smallest storage configuration, I also keep background rendering switched off, which does slow down the overall export times, but means that you don't have an enormous Final Cut library that swells over time. In the past, I'd have Final Cut libraries that quickly took up more than half of the terabyte hard drive in my old 2013 iMac. As Final Cut generates different versions of the files ready for the final export, or to make the timeline faster to work with. But with the M1, even when editing highly compressed HEVC H.265 video from the iPhone, which is the smaller, more compressed file size option, it never drops a beat, and exports with color correction, animations, effects in about a third of real time, so a 12-minute video takes me about 4 minutes to export. So, generally, once the clips are in and aligned by that clap, the audio track gets a compressor applied, the brightness is dropped on the iPhone footage as it shoots in HDR and looks like this out of the camera, and I feel like that's a little bit bright. But once the audio levels are right and the video colour is set, I turn these two tracks into a compound clip to speed up the editing process so that things don't get misaligned. The first pass is then basically an assembly cut, taking out all the mistakes where I've misread stuff, big gaps, and also dropping the titles in and the iCave answers overlays without bothering to put in the appropriate text at that point. And this is simply for speed so that I can paste them in just the right places. I'll also use the M key to drop in markers where I know that there's specific B-roll that will need to go in, whether that's a screenshot from a website reporting a news story, or a clip for an Apple event, or Apple Tomorrow renders, or product shots of something that I'm reviewing. Then the titles get updated with the text from the script in Notes, which is when the iCave answers find their way in, and last of all I add overlays like this one that asks you to subscribe to the channel. And once all that's done, it's just a case of hitting export, and while Final Cut does that, I'll be making the thumbnail over in Photoshop that I think people will find interesting and click on. And although this isn't a YouTube tutorial as such, the thumbnail and title are probably way more important than what actually goes into the video that I'm talking about. Then it all gets uploaded to YouTube, typically just before I leave to take the kids to school in the morning, and it gets scheduled for 12 UTC, which is GMT UK time in the winter, and then I head off to work. And then that evening, the whole process starts again. The joy of a daily news show as a side gig. So I hope you found something useful or at least interesting in the video. And if you have any questions about what I use, what I do, please feel free to leave them down in the comments with hashtag iCaveAnswers, and I'll answer them in a future video. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the answer. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.